we have a, thanks, Emily. Today we have a extra special lunch and learn because we have Mike Peroni, Executive Director of NABC, talking with us today about cooperative development, which is one of Northwest Agriculture Business Center's key activities, cooperative development. So he's going to tell us all about that. And after this session, I'll tell you about some other lunch and learns we have planned for September. But I'm Marty Solomon, and along with Emily Mankey, we are hosting this session today. And we're very glad you're here. And it's an open session. It's a dialogue. Please, Mike will present some material. Please add any questions you have to the chat, and we'll also open it up for verbal questions. You can raise your hand physically or with the little hand raise tool in Zoom under reactions, and we'll just take questions. Mike, if you would like to take questions throughout, that's fine, or we can hold them till after you've gone through your slides. You let us know what you'd like to do.
Okay.
All right, let's get started.
And I do hear a little bit of an echo. I don't know if I'm hopeful it's not at my end. It seems to have disappeared already. Thank you.
Yeah, well, turn your mute button on when you're not talking, please. Thank you.
And yeah, and I'll see if I hopefully I've turned off my email so we won't be distracted by the cascade of notifications coming in. Yeah, thank you. Extra special lunch and learn. I'm not sure, but I am really delighted to be here, and I can report that I'm actually a little nervous, which is comical because I've introduced so many of these, and it really is an informal back and forth, but if agreeable, I'd like people to wait until the end for questions. But you can, if you have that burning desire to ask, you can get it up in the chat so that you don't forget. And Emily and Marty are really very capable in terms of curating those questions and even answering them if we run out of time at the end. My name is Mike Peroni. As Marty said, I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Agriculture Business Center. Among other things, NABC is a designated cooperative development center recognized by USDA, and it is one of our key activities. And so today, I'm really quite passionate about the formation of cooperatives in terms of providing opportunity to agricultural producers. All of NABC's activities at the end of the day are designed to increase producer payments and really provide an advanced economic opportunity for producers in Western Washington. So our experience is primarily with marketing co-ops. That's what we'll be talking about today. I have 12 or 13 slides, and we'll roll through this relatively quickly. And then I also have some additional information that I think is really valuable that I will provide for Marty and Emily to put up on the website and make available in their follow-up information. So I'm going to introduce NABC a little bit more, and then we'll roll into cooperative development. Thanks for joining me for lunch. There we go. Our mission at NABC is to advance the economic vitality of agriculture industry in Western Washington. And we do that by providing hands-on business technical services to agricultural enterprise. One thing I love about NABC is we can assist with access to capital, but then we also sort of hang out for a little while to make sure that projects have the leadership and the organizational development and the business planning needs met that make for more successful ventures. We will continue to circle back to organizational development and capital in this conversation. NABC currently serves 12 counties in Western Washington. It's easier to name the counties that we do not serve than those we do. And it is quite probable, if you are not located in one of the counties we serve, that we can work together to provide either references or additional resources somehow. So please don't be intimidated if you're looking for assistance. Get in touch with us. The definition of cooperative from the International Cooperative Alliance is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. And honestly, that's a great definition. It's really these cooperatives that NABC works with tend to be mission-based. And so you'll see here shortly how they really react to the needs of a group of individuals that have come together with a desire to work together rather than independently to, in most cases that we'll talk about today, create access to market or pool their resources so they can enter an existing market as a larger player, where the individual businesses may not be large enough or have the resources. Pulling those resources creates opportunity. Another little piece I wanted to add here is not for profit, not for charity, but for service is kind of the mantra or a common way of thinking about what cooperatives do and how they function. First and foremost, they're business enterprises, so they're not charitable organizations, they're not nonprofits, they're not universities. And so they exist to maximize profit on behalf of their members at the end of the day. But they are enterprises that are democratically owned, democratically controlled by the people who benefit from the services that they provide. So if you're not familiar with cooperatives at all, you'll learn today that each individual has one vote. That individual may be an actual individual or a business entity. And cooperatives are just an excellent example of true democracy in action. I provided this little listy-poo of cooperatives that NABC has helped develop. The North Cascades Meat Producers Cooperative up in Skagit-Whatcom counties, Island Grown Farmers Co-op, which now operates a meat processing facility on Port of Skagit. The Puget Sound Food Hub, which I think we can agree kind of sets the high watermark for regional food hub distribution models. Whidbey Island Grown, which operates off of Whidbey Island. We also formed the Southwest Washington Growers Co-op here in based out of the Chehalis area, which contains two pools, a food hub and grain producers. Recently, the Washington Hmong Farmers Cooperative was incorporated, and they actually just made their first delivery maybe 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. And then that Northwest Local Meats, that's the brand that IGFC is operating under currently. So many of the co-ops that, well, all of the co-ops that NABC works with are recognizable, they're accessible. The initial share of common stock is somewhere between $100 and $1,000. But I wanted to also take a minute to point out that that is not always the case. There are some very big players out there that use this cooperative business model. So cooperatives do, they operate in virtually every country in the world. They operate in just about every industry that you can imagine. I mean, one that is popular is, you see it a lot in childcare. We see it in affordable housing. You're likely member or know a member or have a community food co-op in your area or in your neighborhood. So they can be organized and owned by workers. They can be owned by the communities that they serve. They can be owned by producers or small business, or sometimes a combination of all of these categories. But no matter what the size, no matter how much paper they stack, they adhere to a common set of principles which express these foundational values based on democracy, equality, equity, self-help, responsibility, and solidarity. So it really is a gorgeous response, in my opinion, to a changing world. This is the formation of a cooperative, addressing the needs of a group of individuals, producers or otherwise, is a real opportunity to create opportunity and exercise true democracy. So I have obviously drunk the Kool-Aid in terms of this business model. We're gonna look at this from about 30,000 feet. There's not enough time today to really drill down on it. And if you know me well, you know me, I'm a slave to detail. So you could be here all day listening to a very dry dissertation of how businesses differ. Here's a really quick business structure comparison. And again, looking at who owns it, who receives the profits really stand out here. I have a larger document that deals with much more of the detail here, but in a co-op relative to C Corp or sole proprietorship, it's the members that split the profits by way of stakeholder dividends or patronage dividends, and those are based on typically based on the usage of the services provided by the co-op, not on how much an individual ponied up. In the matter of a C Corp, you might own 51% of shares. Actually, democratic controls out the window because you're a majority shareholder and you're pulling in a majority of profits. In the case of a co-op, much more equitable model. And then, of course, the same would be true of a
I'm going to walk on.
sole proprietorship. There's I have a little bit of a cheat sheet. So if you were to ask NABC, you're a group of growers and you ask NABC to show up and give you a hand, even really in terms of making a decision about what type of business model you'd like to move forward with. We have basically, with help from USDA and certainly our friends in Madison, developed a template for how we go about that. It's broken into 3 stages or 3 steps. I'm going to roll through those quickly and provide just a little bit more information on the bullet point list that you see here. So initially, step 1 is really developing the co-op's business concept. What why are you here? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to pay for it? So, again, the organizational development is critical. We typically start that with the formation of a chartered steering committee. So that's a committee of dedicated individuals that have taken the time to identify those principal questions, why, where, what, and how. Why are we here? How long are we going to be here? Who can participate? And again, how are we going to pay for it? The result of that is hopefully a functional sort of foundation to build your board of directors out later on. Business development is a critical component. Those conversations early on, defining the co-op's business model, what services and products are you going to offer, and can even get into some initial pricing and ask yourself, are these services timely and relevant? Are they going to create a significant economic impact and benefit to the co-op members? And at that point, you would create a written business plan for moving the project forward, and quite likely begin some market research or conduct a feasibility study. Having that clear written plan is kind of critical moving forward. It can function as your North Star because there are just constant questions that come up in the formation of any business. And so creating that early business development is a critical component for later success. The slide that you're looking at here includes the whiteboard from actually the development of the Southwest Washington Growers Co-op. You can literally see, it's a little bit small here, but you can, and my writing is not brilliant, but that is the original mission statement is there. Some of the early needs and the words that kept coming up at that bottom left, hope, rural character, stewardship. That process, which was a crossover between the organizational and business development, and included the member development, as in, what do these members want? Why are we here? That group, when we worked together, they were no strangers to the cooperative business model, but had been members of cooperatives like Daragold and CHS, much larger co-ops. And so they were very vocal that they wanted this cooperative to be by, for, and about the membership. And so that's just, again, that sort of guiding principle that has, to a great degree, contributed to the success of that particular co-op's development. It made its way into the mission statement, and it made its way into early policy development, and has really been a great guiding force. So I cannot stress again the importance of that membership engagement, and we'll touch a little bit on the opportunity to educate members on the cooperative business model, educate board members on board conduct and successful business management. The last bullet point here is the resources and funding. If you've worked with me before, you know I'm just a bit of a stickler for, I'm a little like Debbie Downer, as in how is this going to get paid for? What sort of capital is going to be required to move forward? So it's also critical in terms of timing to take a very realistic look early on at sources, at forthcoming liabilities, and set forth schedule and a strategy on how you might access capital for cooperative formation. Stage 2 is the business planning. That's where organizational development really sort of evolves into formalizing your board of directors, legal incorporation, establishing bylaws, all that really fun stuff that NABC is here to help with. And then again, just sort of revisiting that early business plan and formalizing that, because that business plan should also include a capital plan. Where's the equity going to come from? Again, for securing financing to move the cooperative development forward. This is the time in stage 2 where you would begin to recruit members to join the cooperative. And in terms of the resources, the funding in stage 2 is really becomes not so much about how are we going to pay for coffee and donuts at the next meeting, but rather how are we going to pay for the launch? Do we need a physical facility? So the resources and funding typically escalate in scope during stage 2. Stage 3 is the launch, and everybody wants to just kind of fast forward to that stage, and that's possible too. You can fast track these projects. I put forth the proposition, as my friend Chuck used to tell me, it doesn't matter what order you do this in, because you'll have a chance to revisit anything you missed. So if you do fast forward a project, you'll have to trust me when I say that you will be, it may not be in the first 3 months, but it will certainly, I would imagine, be in the first 3 years that you revisit membership engagement. You will revisit your organizational development. You will revisit your business plan. And stage 3 is really ensuring that the board is functional, that there are sound operating policies in place, that that they have received, if there's an opportunity to receive any kind of board training or cooperative management training, that they're in a position to do so. They should, at the point of launch, be maybe not necessarily hiring staff, but at least in a position to understand what those staffing needs will be. And then in terms of the business oversight, that's why it's so critical to get those sound policies in place, have a functional board, a good leadership through membership engagement, because now's the time that you'll actually be putting that business plan to work, and that will be the acid test. So if there's any weakness in the planning, it will come out during the launch. In terms of member development, this is a great opportunity as things begin to function, people begin to work together, money begins to change hands, commerce begins. It's important too for members to be able to echolocate themselves within the cooperative. Where do their roles start and stop? Because a cooperative business model is based on member engagement. The board of directors is elected from the membership, and in most cases, or many cases, policy, or certainly bylaws, and in some cases policy, is a membership vote. So there are typically committees formed from the membership that are providing input to the board of directors. And, all of that, exercising true democracy, really is based on engagement, but also to a degree, a little background in the education or the skill set necessary to effectively work together in a business venture. So the success factors, and you'll pardon, I don't like this many words on a page, but I could not come up with a meme to get my point across. This is I came across this. It's borrowed from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Center for Cooperatives from their website. And there's a link here in a minute. I am just flabbergasted by how accurate this is. The use of committees, advisors, and outside expertise is of critical importance in my assessment in the success, especially of these grassroots ventures. Keeping the members informed and operating transparently is absolutely critical to maintain that member engagement. Again, we're now bordering on opinion, but this, in my experience, these things have held true. Conducting business-like meetings, and I have experienced both very business-like meetings, very functional meetings, which are start and stop on time, and in which clear decisions are made. And I've also been a party to less business-like meetings. At the end of the day, the more business-like, the more functional and focused these board and committee meetings can be, the better the member engagement, the better the policy, and the better the overall performance of the cooperative, in my assessment. Management relations, I think this is often people's first opportunity to learn parliamentary procedure. If you're familiar, I'm not a huge fan of formal Robert's Rules of Order, but a modified Robert's Rules or any one of a number of templates for functional board management relations, I think is really beneficial. Following sound accounting practices sounds simple, but it's often the last thing that people think of. This is another area where NABC provides an enormous amount of support to existing cooperatives. I'm very happy to do so. And it also allows for accurate reporting, which then allows for good policy, good and transparent operations, and excellent communication between the membership, staff, and board of directors. Developing alliances with other cooperatives, cooperation between co-ops. It's absolutely, it's absolutely critical. Both NABC and others, our friends from Mission West in Montana, are working with cooperatives statewide and specific to Western Washington to develop and advance these alliances and create additional opportunity for the producers that these cooperatives represent. And then developing clear policies. I've been involved in board-run projects for many years. I'm a big fan of clear and enforceable policies. And this is also an opportunity to remind people that in these types of businesses that our membership becomes board, and there's a lot of opportunity for either real or perceived conflict of interest. Good policies around conflict of interest and confidentiality are important. The potential risks to a new co-op, that lack of clearly defined mission, purpose, and focus. We touched on that. I'm sure you can imagine. What I have learned is If you're gonna skip or shortcut anything, don't let it be the mission and vision conversation and process. That's a place where people will weigh in. It will feel sometimes like it's taking forever, but it is absolutely critical in setting those guiding principles that will move these projects forward. Lack of good leadership among the membership. You may find yourself in a position where maybe nobody wants to step forward, or the people stepping forward may or may not accurately represent the hopes, dreams, and desires of the stakeholders. And so that's an area, that's a potential risk to the vibe necessary to create a functional cooperative, which is one of true democracy and cooperation. Inadequate feasibility studies or business plans. I'll just shake my finger in warning. There's opportunity. There's a lot of assistance available for those particular things. NABC can help with feasibility studies, business plans. I have a laundry list of organizations that can assist in the development of tenable feasibility studies and business plans. And there's very likely people in the room today that are quite adept and capable at that. The failure to use experienced advisors and consultants. I think that's another pitfall. It would appear as though some co-ops are very warm and very quick to bring in consultants, to bring in and take the advice of experienced advisors, either in the industry or specific to organizational development or cooperative development. Those that are approach that sort of help with an open mind and an open heart appear to do better faster. To me, the lack of financial commitment from members, again, I think that harkens back to understanding that this is a business and requires capital to move forward. There are arguments initially with the Southwest Washington Growers Co-op. The governing body wanted that co-op to be very accessible. They made that commitment to the purchase of common stock for $100, which they felt anyone could afford. I understood, though, though I didn't necessarily agree. But that has worked well for them in the first 3 years. The Puget Sound Food Co-op started at a relatively low number and then revisited and upped that number to about 1,000. So that's another one of those things, and I think we're seeing it now in Southwest. If you don't have a significant financial commitment from the members initially, 3 or so years in, you're going to revisit that, and you're going to provide. You'll find opportunity to raise equity, and one of the most meaningful ways to do that, in my assessment, is through the membership, because then again they have it's a real opportunity for them to put their money where their mouth is, quite literally, in terms of their commitment to the venture. The failure to identify and minimize business risks, I think, is true in any endeavor. Sometimes with cooperatives, the goals or the mission and vision may be a bit lofty and seductive. So I think you have to just exercise diligence in very realistically identifying and quantifying risks to the business model. The lack of adequate financing, of course, is an issue, and inadequate communication. So again, these notes borrowed with a hearty thank you from the University of Wisconsin. Well, that concludes my exciting foray into cooperative development, and ended with this slide of NABC partners. It's likely that many of you will see your name up here somewhere. How'd I do on hitting the post? 12:32. That's not too shabby.
Perfect. And again, if folks want to put questions in the chat, please do, or feel free to speak up. Mike, did you have any other things you want to add right at this point, or we just open it?
No, I think we can, just roll into questions, please.
Good. Anybody have anything burning right now? Maria, are you?
Yeah,
Nice to see you.
nice to see you as well. And thank you so much. This is really incredible. And thank you, Holly, for at the last minute letting me know that this was available this afternoon. This is quite a treat. So I have interest in exploring putting a food hub together for Okanagan County and Colville Reservation, which is our neighbors. And I've been spending a little bit of time at Puget Sound Food Hub, and it's such an incredibly successful model, and it gives me a lot of hope. We have a lot of challenges in Okanagan County. We're the second largest county. The first largest county in the state, and we're the second poorest county in the state. And we have some location challenges. It's a pass to 3 passes between towns. So I have a lot of research to do to even find out if it's viable. Do you have some recommendations on what first steps would look like, just to see if it's even a viable opportunity for our area?
For food hub development specifically?
Yeah, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am located in Lewis County, which is a rural county in Western Washington. Doesn't have the same issues in terms of access that Okanagan County does, certainly, but is a rural county which has those unique challenges. So I think what you'll run into initially is, that access to market. You'll probably find that the market, to create a sustainable profit and loss statement, you might have to travel outside of your community to access that. Indeed, maybe it's even to Western Washington. So I would think that it would be important to, continue. I know you have a relationship, or that Okanagan County, OPMA comes to mind, and NABC was there helping at the beginning as well. But they've done well at accessing those markets. And what we did in Southwest Washington initially is Stephen Bramwell and I, Stephen's from WSU Thurston County Extension. We developed what we jokingly referred to as our road show. And so it was it was kind of a show and tell of Puget Sound Food Hub. Here's how they started. Here's their trajectory in terms of revenue. Here's their membership base. We really put together maybe 5 or 10 slides specific to Puget Sound. And then we talked about what each of our organizations could bring to the table in terms of developing those services in Southwest Washington. And we did outreach in each of 5 rural counties and also in Pierce County. So that was very effective. COVID changed the world in terms of, what something like that might look like. But I don't think, for the kind of engagement necessary to put a food hub together, I would strongly recommend considering something similar, where you're literally going into communities and meeting directly with communities of growers and giving them a bright, shining example of what's possible, and then really posing the question and honestly assessing what those answers are. We were blessed in that we did have a positive response, but that's not always the case. And sometimes, you may be just a little early. So, and there's other things that you can do to prepare for when it's more timely, if that is the case.
I have one quick thing to add, if you don't mind, Mike.
No.
Please, all the information I can get. Michael, I'm taking notes feverishly, so thank you. It's super helpful.
Of course.
I would just add, to the point of maybe the market not being sustainable in Okanagan County. One thing that I know all of the hubs have had, or at least Puget Sound Food Hub and Southwest Washington Food Hub and Link have all had great success with, is selling to school districts and selling to food access organizations through WSDA grants, through the We Feed Washington grants, through the WSDA Farm to School grants, and to a lesser extent to the WSDA Resiliency grants. There are some USDA grants for food access as well, but they're a little harder to access. So I guess for like first steps, my recommendation would be find those allies in school districts and food access organizations now. Because if you, I feel like we sort of back engineered it, like figured out like, oh, this is a viable thing that we can do. Here's this funding. Let's try to find some food access organizations and school districts who want to work with us. But had we come in with partnerships with those school districts, I think it maybe would have been a little bit easier to figure it out, because that is one thing that we've learned with school districts in particular and food access organizations, is if you don't have really dedicated staff within those organizations who want this and who want to order from farms, then it makes it really difficult, because it isn't easy. It takes a lot of passion and a lot of hard work to make it work. So if there's somebody who's just sort of like, I don't know, it's usually ends up fizzling out. So if you go into your community now and find those food service directors and find those food access executive directors or whoever who want it to work and who want to do it, then that would be a good, I think, like put you off on a really solid ground.
Wow, thanks, Emily. I really appreciate it. And I'm like, this will be the last question. How do I investigate to find out if we even have enough farmers in Okanagan County and Caldwell Reservation? I couldn't imagine that we don't. It's a fairly agriculturally rich area, but any thoughts on how I could find that out? Would I just look at the U.S. Agriculture Census Bureau or something like that?
Well, I'm tempted to ask if there's anyone here from USDA or NAS today, because I don't want to make any enemies. But I found that because the farms on most of the census data, it's not necessarily the most accurate means of ascertaining an accurate answer to your question. And I think working with the first place I would probably go would be county extension, if that's active in your area, if you're blessed with an active, or even maybe the next county over would be helpful there. And also to your regional farmers markets and to those organizations, again, like OPMA, if you're familiar with, is that the Okanagan Producers Marketing Association?
Yep, it sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, start rubbing elbows with that outfit, and really, I think, and we were, I come from decades of production experience in Southwest Washington. So I was blessed with a working knowledge of that, of the landscape, walking into it. But I think it would be difficult coming into it cold, and lean on your friends at WSU, and OPMA and others that you know of and I don't.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Marilyn, you want to go ahead with the question?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. This is just to kind of compliment what Mike and Emily have already shared. Stephen Bramwell and I worked together on doing 3 case studies of food hubs in Washington State. 2 of them have been published. One is on the Southwest Washington Food Hub, the other on Puget Sound Food Hub. And while they don't tell the stories as richly, perhaps, as they deserve to be told, they do at least give an overview of the origins of each one of these hubs, what partners were involved, a little bit about changes in the mix of market channels that were involved in early sales versus later sales, and all the little details of how the basic elements were put together, both with the help of NABC. So that might be a place to kind of look to, and I can add a link to how to access that if you're interested.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
Very interested. Yeah, thank you. That'd be great.
I just want to let you all know that we'll put the links to resources and these questions that are being asked and the answers in a Q&A document that's posted online with the Lunch and Learn recording and slides as well. So you can access this next week.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Marilyn. I was trying to remember to mention that as well. It's an excellent resource. There's also a series of 4 USDA documents that are a little bit more difficult to get through. They're large, but they are incredibly helpful and frankly a bit more candid than I'm accustomed to from USDA in terms of especially assessing realistic risk in food hub development and continued success. And I think if we do not have links to those, I'll work with Emily and Marty to make sure that we can provide those.
Are there other questions you'd like to put in the chat or just speak up? Anybody? I had one question, which is within the realm of food system related businesses, are there particular kinds of businesses or activities that are really particularly good for creating co-ops or for having a co-op structure, or some that are really not so great for a co-op structure?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question totally, Marty. Take another run at that.
I'm just wondering if any kind of business in the food system, any type, is one that could be a
I
co-op.
see.
Or if there are some that are particularly good or not good for being a co-op.
Yeah, you know, in my reading, you know, academically, you'll find that the phrase will come up again and again, like any business could be, you know, adapted. The co-op model could be adapted for any business doing any enterprise. But practically, when you look, I think our biggest exposure, or certainly my biggest exposure to cooperatives, is the community food cooperatives, which operate in nearly every community that I frequent, and agricultural cooperatives, both large and small. The other area where I'm seeing it work well and frequently is in the childcare industry. And so I think, and I don't know, so I want to answer you and say that, you know, any business, absolutely, I agree. Any business could be, the co-op business model could be adapted and likely should be adapted to any business. But those businesses that do adopt it, those businesses that do, because there is a little bit of extra work, and it does take a little bit of extra time to be transparent and to be equitable and to be all those things that I think make this world an incrementally better place for us all to live. It takes a certain amount of commitment, and sometimes that commitment is born from either crisis or just a shared desire. And so I do think, you know, in farming and in agriculture, in my experience in Southwest, the cooperative formation and the urgency around creating an entity in which smaller operators could function as one large operator was critical because of crisis in the marketplace. In other areas with community food co-ops, I think it's people gathering together with a shared vision of a better way to live, a better way to buy food, a different way to spend their money and to share profits and to govern. So I think the answer is it could be adopted to any business model, and with the exception of those giant co-ops, which I named and I'm completely fascinated by. It would appear that the real determining factor is a sense of urgency or shared vision, I think, is at the foundation of a lot of cooperative formation.
Thank you. other questions? Any other thoughts that you have, Mike, that you wanted to throw in there?
I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity. It's great to be able to talk about something I'm passionate about. It's very nice to be able. I'm hopeful I've introduced NABC to some folks that that hadn't had exposure prior. And thank you for sharing this this lunch hour with me.
Well, thank you for sharing all the information, Mike. And thanks to everyone for being here. I just want to let you know before we sign off, again, we'll have all the information from this Lunch and Learn online, and you can find the information from past Lunch and Learns on our website as well. That's www.fsp.org. Maybe Emily, maybe you could put that in the chat while I finish saying that in that website, you'd go under the library area, the resource library, and you can find all the past Lunch and Learn information there. And now looking forward to the future, we have 2 Lunch and Learns planned for September. We're going to have Mike Poteet on September 13th talking about meat processing and a study that he has recently completed related to that. And then at the end of the month, September 27th, we're going to have Melissa Muller speaking about the value-added producer grants and talking about how to apply for those. So if you have, we hope that you'll join us for those. And if you have ideas for other Lunch and Learns that you would like to, topics you would like to know more about, reports that have come out, resources you think should be shared with others, please just let us know about that. You can reach Emily at NABC or Mike or me. And I think that's it for today.